Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, one of my responsibilities was also promoting startups in the country. And last year on International Women's Day, we had a mentoring session for women founders of startups. If I remember correctly, there were about 40 or 50 women founders. And we had also got about 20 odd mentors, all women, to help them out in a day-long session. And the whole day, it was such a revelation. First of all, everyone thought that there was a tremendous need to build capacities. When you venture into this business world, you want to know how to manage marketing, strategy, finances, accounting, regulations, compliances. So one of the major challenges that women definitely face entering the business world is knowing all these rules and regulations and how to deal with them. Secondly, if you look at the data, only 10% of the founders among all startups in the country are actually women. So there is a tremendous disparity there, showing the huge disconnect with women founders and the way the society, the economy and the business world treats women in general. So I think there are a lot of very interesting and challenging issues here. We know that the contribution of women to GDP in India is, I think it's about 18%. In labor force participation is also very low, I think 25 odd, because the surveys don't count the contribution of women in domestic work, and mostly they are working in informal sector and doing unpaid labor. So I think when we talk about women's contribution to building a $5 trillion economy, we really have to look at all aspects, that how we can ensure participation of women in a much greater percentage in our workforce. It is estimated by the McKinsey study, which I think came out last year, that if the labor participation of women goes up by 10%, India would be adding $770 billion to its GDP by 2025. So the numbers are staggering, the opportunity is staggering. So I think we have a great panel here, and definitely I'm sure some good ideas will emerge on how to deal with the challenges. So with these opening remarks, let me invite other panelists to say their bit.
Thank you so much, Secretary Abhishek. As you have been, heading the Department of Industrial Promotion. Is this audible?
Yes.
Yeah. You've been heading the Department of Industrial Promotion, and you have been really at the forefront of some of the major transformations which the government of India has been trying to make in order to enable far greater participation. First of all, of all individuals, that is, men and women, but particularly with regard to women. And when we start talking of women entrepreneurship, when we start talking of finance flows to women, where do you see the actual roadblocks, the hitches? Where is it that impedes the progress of women and impedes them from taking up this rightful place where we find, as you very correctly said, that the contribution of women to the labor force, to the GDP, they can be quantum jump, 15 to 20% straight away, 20-25% to the GDP can happen if the potential of women is actually allowed to fructify and reach where it should be. So what has been your experience?
Actually, I can only share with you what the women founders themselves have shared from time to time in various events. I think when they ask the venture funds or any angel investors for funding, I think first of all they have an initial disadvantage, because people sometimes wonder that compared to their male counterparts, are they as good, or would they be able to deliver as much? I think they start with a basic distrust and preconceived notions. So the experience of women founders in mobilizing funds from investors has been very, very difficult, much more difficult than their male counterparts. See, accessing funds is difficult, and it should be difficult for everyone. No entrepreneur should be able to access funds easily. But the question is whether women have the same opportunities and same challenges, or they have more challenges in accessing funds. That is really the question. And what I have heard from women founders, that it is extremely difficult. And accessing fund for anyone in our system, whether it's banks, for MSMEs, or from anywhere, is challenging in any case, because we have some very archaic systems, and you need the kind of documentation that is so difficult to produce. And when women who are venturing into perhaps the business world, most of them in small businesses, for them it becomes much more challenging. They may not be having any credit history, they may not be having any business experience. So I think for first timers, it's definitely a big problem.
Thank you. Sudhir, let me come to you. You have been handling MSMEs, and you know the problems that MSMEs in general in India have been facing. With regard particularly to women, and here I would also like to note, the last panel was on technology. That technology has come in, and technology is making major changes. There is this huge space of fintech developing in the country, and the government of India has been at great pains to develop fintech in the service of entrepreneurs. Now, do you see fintech making a difference in any way? First of all, what has been happening in the MSME space as far as gender is concerned? Second, does fintech have a role to play in closing the gender gap?
So thank you, Sunjoy, and good afternoon to everybody. I'll just start from some more stories. Every morning when I wake up and go to my roof, I find a pair of parrots. So this parrot I've been observing for quite some time. And this obviously I believe there's a male and female. And they work together. They work together for their own family. So I consider that nature has given power for both male and female, equal power to serve the family, to serve the society. So having said that, I consider that female are equally empowered, capable to do their business. And as Mr. Abhishek brought out, in the corporate world, in the bigger industrial sector, while the women's role is around 10%, but in the MSME sector, this role is slightly better. MSME sector, we have around 20% role of the women. And there's one more micro sector where we are providing a lot of input in the PMEDP programs. Here the women and SC/ST together contribute around 50%. I just, when we are speaking and talking today, I find that there are a lot of women here who are more empowered, they are doing a lot of good things in their own spheres. And I feel that through this group, we can do more to the societies, particularly the bottom portion of the society. Like in our country, we have a large number of entrepreneurs, small micro entrepreneurs, these are called artisans. We have a number of schemes where we are providing help to the artisans. One of the schemes is called Spurti, in which the artisans are grouped in a cluster mode, and we provide support up to 5 crore rupees for such clusters. So I request that if this group can help us create more and more clusters using our scheme, then we certainly will be able to serve more and more women. And the clusters that we have till now approved around 225, which is serving around 1.4 lakh people. Around more than 50% workers in this group are women. From the Khaji side, from the co-ed side, from various sectors. And I'll particularly like to give one example. In Bhubaneswar, there's a 40 kilometers from Bhubaneswar, there's a small village. One professor, Professor Garg, decided to serve his own village. I had gone and visited this place, and he just created a new environment in this place. Using the scheme, one of the schemes of the ministry, he has been able to empower a large number of women. The women which used to sell the artifact which they were creating for bangles and all these ear rings, all those kind of things for 10 to 20 rupees. Through e-commerce, they are selling it now for 200 rupees. Now imagine how much benefit they are getting. So this is how we can slowly make the lower portion of the society empowered. So, as you correctly brought out, the fintech industry, the tech industry particularly, where now educated folks are coming into that, they can really create a lot of new businesses, new scopes. But I was hearing to the earlier panel also, and one of the key things which I realized for the first time, I was knowing it, but realizing sitting with the group is something different, that how difficult it is for a woman to really start a new business venture. Any legal issues, they find it very, very challenging to sort out problems. Then any kind of finance, there's a big challenge. Family itself is a challenge. But taking help of various schemes of the Government of India, now we have created a large number of schemes, and working with empowered group of the women and other societies, other groups of the society, I think that we can create a lot of opportunities. We can work together and create a large number of jobs also. And yes, tech world can really help create new jobs. Now again, I share another story that how tech can create, empower the people down the line. So another village, I had gone there, and one institution there, creating empowering women. All these students which I met were girl students. When they performed in front of me, I was really thrilled. The way these children were feeling empowered in doing things were really, really nice to see. So I think that we need to work together, create some more synergies, take the help of the various schemes available with the ministries, and we are ready to work with every group in this area to serve the society. And with every time passing, we are seeing that in particularly the PMEDP program, the women entrepreneurs number is growing, and we are providing more assistance also. It is around 35% for the women, as against 25% for other people.
Thanks, Sudhir. I'll come back with some more questions, but let me turn to Marika. Marika, EU has been, EU started various initiatives like Think Small Principle. The EU has been leading the charge as far as the role of MSMEs are concerned. The EU today, 99% of all entrepreneurs are MSME entrepreneurs. And the EU is doing taking a lot of policy initiatives to promote small entrepreneurs. In fact, the EU is leading the charge against big tech, cutting down big tech, whittling down big tech, challenging big tech in every aspect, and seeing that there is far greater competition, larger number of entrepreneurs come up. And where now in these 99%, what is the role of women? Where do they stand? And do you have programs which make sure that the gender gap closes?
Yeah, okay. All right. Big topic. No, in the EU, I mean, despite the fact that we have very high, still lower than men, the female participation in workforce is about 66%. So compared to India, it's of course high. But that's still, I mean, there are more women than there are men in the EU, and the corresponding male participation is 77%. So we still have a gap despite all the efforts that we are doing. And what is more striking is that in the EU, only 29% of entrepreneurs are women. So that's very low. I mean, that could be so much more. So we have, of course, you can do a lot. I mean, you have policy measures at government level, at EU level, member states level, at company level, what you can do to increase this. What we are doing at the EU level by the European Commission to basically increase this 29%. There are a lot of different methods, but I don't think we have like one single thing that has worked best. So basically we have created an e-platform, like a one-stop shop for women entrepreneurship. And we have also created a European network of mentors for women entrepreneurs. So these are kind of really covering the whole EU, now 27 members, to come together, to women to come together and to discuss and to look at, basically share information and to see how we can lift that 29% up. So these are just some of the things we are doing. Why there are not more women, that is 29%, I think many of the reasons are same to some extent that they are in India. It's access to finance is one, access to information, training, access to networks for business purposes. I think it's a kind of universal thing that men just tend to be better in networking than women are. I mean, I'm sorry to say, I shouldn't, but it's true. It's true. And then, of course, reconciling business and family concerns, which is same in the EU. So some of the reasons, to a large extent, are the same as they are in India. And what we are trying also to do is, for instance, in trade policy, which is my area, I'm running the trade and economic section, the EU delegation. We're trying to also look at how trade policy can, at an international level, can contribute to more women entering in the workforce and closing the gender gap. And some things that we are looking at now, first of all, we have an SME chapter in our free trade agreements. Where, of course, it's not per se gender specific, but it will also encourage more women entrepreneurs. And we also have in our free trade agreement something that we call trade and sustainable development chapters, where we make binding commitments to ILO standards when it comes to also gender and same opportunities at the workplace. We are also looking even at having gender chapters in our free trade agreements. So for the moment we have proposed this in an agreement we are negotiating with Chile. So we are trying to bring these considerations basically from the national level to the EU level, and then also to the international level in our trade policy. And so I think it's really about going to all those levels, and of course at company level too, when it comes to CSR, for instance. There I think we can do much more. And in general, I think if we want to make this word work for everyone, we just have to have more women in the room. No, I stop there.
And thanks, Marika. We'll certainly come back with more questions. But now let me turn to Jukka. Jukka, Finland bucks the trend in many of these issues. As far as gender gap is concerned, it's amongst the top rankings. Are there any countries above Finland? Were you number 3 or number 4? Who's above you?
It depends on the rank.
No, are you the government of Finland, the youngest prime minister, 34 years? Every member of the coalition of women? No, you can basically teach the rest of the world. Don't be modest about it. You can teach the world about how to get the gender balance right. What is it that is happening? What is it that you're doing?
Thank you. That's a very good question. I could talk for hours and hours and hours because, as I think somebody in the previous panel told the audience that in his house she speaks. It's the same thing with our house. Marika knows very well. My wife speaks so much, and then I have 2 daughters. My older one is turning 15 and my younger one is turning 8, and they just keep on talking. What is the reason for the success in Finland in this area? The number 1 reason is that Finnish men are smart. Because we know that Finnish women are smarter and more effective and productive, especially young mothers, to be honest. I'm a relatively young guy. I used to work in the private sector. I've hired maybe 300 people in my life, and I think like top 10 out of people who I have hired, I think 9 are women, and I think half are young mothers. Whenever a young woman who is working for me comes to me and tells me, I'm so sorry, I'm pregnant, I'm actually like, woohoo! Because I know when she comes back to the office, when she comes to the office, she's so concentrated actually in the work. So the number one reason is that Finnish men are smart because they understand that women are smarter. Okay, number two reason, I think it's all about education. As simple as that. It's all about education. You know, Finnish education system ranks number one in all the possible ranks. So there is really a correlation between the education and the gender equality. I think that's as simple as that. To be honest, I'm not worried about the kind of how women in the future will succeed. I think women will rule. I'm starting to be worried about men. You know, you were no. I'm dead serious. I have a son as well who's 16 and he's struggling. But you know, we have, as you said, we have a coalition government. That 5 parties, all of them are led by women. 4 out of those 5 coalition party leaders, they are below 35. It's scary. I don't like extremes, but I think we are going to the other extreme at the moment. What was the question?
You have answered it.
Okay, I've answered it. Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Women in tech. There's a lot of discussion about that we need more and more women in tech. I fully agree, but I don't think that hardly anybody is actually touching the real problem. We are talking about how many percentage of women we have in fintech or AI, etc. But the real problem is that all the software is written by young men. We don't talk about who actually is who are the programmers, who are writing the code. And before we actually have women, whether they are young or old women, actually writing the code, writing the software, before that happens, the software continues to be relatively shitty. So that I think is the biggest problem, and that is again something that we are trying to work on in Finland, to get young girls into coding. That is so important. And that's one of the topics that is kind of close to my heart.
Well, thank you, Jukka. I mean, I'll just that last point you raised is extremely relevant, and we have luckily with us one woman who is in fintech. That is Priya. And I'm going to address this question directly to her. What Jukka said is absolutely correct. That as fintech moves, even the algorithms which are being written, and algorithms which use artificial intelligence, which are using big data, all the big data is completely biased against it. If you're going by past precedents, women don't stand a chance. So what is it that can be done when you start talking about the MSME space, when you start talking about lending and using fintechs to start lending, algorithms start weeding out which one should be lent to, which one should not be lent to, who's a proper customer, who's not a proper customer. Are we going down a very dangerous path?
That's an interesting question, and it's a very tough one to answer. I want to start by actually thanking Jukka. Thank you for everything you said. It gives everyone here a lot of hope. It gave me a lot of hope, actually. And I'm waiting for the day when I'm attending a panel that says, he speaks. And, I think that will be exciting.
I think that's a very
and
internal joke.
That's
That
a
is
very,
a very internal
oh, that
joke.
is a very internal joke, yeah. So that'll be exciting. So I work in the fintech space, and fintech essentially means providing banking and financial services through technology. So you're providing the same service that a bank does, or the same loan that a lending organization does, but you're using technology to enable that. That's essentially what fintech means. How it's different from traditional banks is that traditional banks have cumbersome processes. They ask for a lot of documentation. They take a long time to process your loan. Fintech changes all that because they use alternate data. So they don't rely on the data that's given by you. They look at data sources other than those that are given by you, data sources that are available outside. They use those data sources to write very smart algorithms. They use machine learning, artificial intelligence, and those algorithms predict your credit worthiness. So they tell you whether or not you will get a loan. That's essentially what fintechs are doing. That's how they're providing speed, they're providing loans, etc. The issue continues to be that if you look at all the credit that's given out, only 5% of the credit is being given to women. 95% of the credit is still today being given to men. Quite interestingly, I've been now in the banking space for about 22, 23 years. Every institution and every bank that I've worked with, when you look at data and compare male versus female, females are much better paymasters. So NPA levels or default rates with females are half for that of men. So it's in the favor of the financial institution to actually lend to women. If you look at women, the businesses that women run, and you look at their margins, the margins that of women-led businesses are about 30-31%, as opposed to the businesses that men lead, which are at about 19%. I think these statistics are correct. And therefore, that also makes lending to women very, very favorable. So if fintechs were to use their algorithms very wisely and actually look at past data to predict the future, women would be very, very well advantaged because you have low NPA levels and you actually have profitable businesses. The reason that this actually doesn't work is because this entire banking world is like the entire banking world is a man's world. If 95% of our clients are men, 95% of our employees are men. Because it's a man's world, we cater to women like we cater to men, and that doesn't work. So a few years ago, I'd gone to Australia. They have a very large bank that runs a very successful women's program, not as a CSR activity, but because the P&L is profitable. And that's when things become exciting, when the P&L is profitable. Things don't become exciting or very large when it's done only as a CSR effort. They run a program for women that caters to women. So women have needs of financial planning, they need to know accounting, they need to be given networking opportunities. They have a program that does all of that, and they run it very, very successfully. Women from all stratas of life in Australia are with them. They enable their businesses, they enable those women entrepreneurs. So I think that's essentially what we need to do. I think fintech can help in financial inclusion, it can help in economic contribution, it can definitely help in women empowerment. We just have to use it the right way.
Okay, one quick question to on
They had one. They had one.
which OnlyFans are doing. Is there sense in having by policy prescription banks which only finance women? That is
We
the
had
mandate.
one which
That failed.
then
And she was in trouble. And she was in trouble.
It was no different from the other banks.
I went there, it was a disaster.
No, but is it an idea? Something which is worth pursuing? Is it a policy which is worth pursuing? Then Finland did something like that.
It's
You had
I'm so young.
I think
which
maybe a
actually
women's
went out to
bank,
Africa and lent to young, women entrepreneurs in Africa.
maybe a women's bank, or definitely a women's specific program. I think it's required. Because I think the needs are completely different. They're completely...
Actually, if I can
Yeah,
briefly intervene.
Sudhir, and you should be responding to this.
After, so there's a fund of funds from the Ministry of Commerce Industry run by SIDBI and of 10,000 crore rupees corpus. So after that, we made an intervention that at least 1,000 crores of that must go to venture funds, AIFs, that cater primarily to women's requirements. Either they could be to startups led by women, or they could be benefiting women in a significant way. So there was a specific intervention. I think unless we push the envelope, if we do the things in the usual manner, I don't think there will be any significant breakthrough in these dismal statistics. There have to be specific interventions. For example, we mentioned about education. I think education and skilling are the most important things. So really you have to make interventions so that specific education capacity building programs are there for women. If you just try to do it as a percentage, it will never work. Similarly for funding, you have to earmark funds for them because otherwise they will never get access to those funds. And earmarking 10-20% funds out of totally nothing much. It is still very small. We used to sponsor from the department large number of startup founders for participation in events abroad. I said that the number of men and women must be same. And it's not that half should be women. Men should be as many as women, that's all. So people said that we have only 10% women founders. I said you start from them. Because otherwise you have to push. It was not easy, but it helped that the startup team that we built up had at least 70% women, girls. So that was very helpful. I think we need more and more women around in the policy making space, in the implementing agency space, so that their perspectives, which are very different sometimes and very welcome, are taken care of by the entire system.
So what Sarah said is very nice. So one of the things which is changing in the manufacturing space with the greening of the economy is that everybody is trying to move towards buying products which are green. And India has a natural strength in that area. And particularly our villages, small towns, the large number of recipes, solutions, product variety available, which can be brought in the green space and which are being brought in the green space. And this is where the large number of women can be really empowered. They already have the knowledge, they have the technology, they can create these businesses. And this is one we can really target. And if we have a specific program for that, which we have to a large extent, but we can further improve on that. So if we target this kind of group, and with the knowledge which is available that fintech, through the fintech, that women are more cautious about making the payments, they are more cautious about the social status. They know very well that if they fail to make a payment, then there will be huge impact on themselves and around on the family. So they are better pay masters. So if that strength is utilized, and then we create that space for green industry, together I think we can work for that to bring more and more women in the workspace and the entrepreneurial space. And second thing which I want to add is that the Ministry of MSME is having around 10,000 crore investment plan in the technology. So this is a 3-tier model in which we are investing. So big spaces, big city, big industrial hubs, around 150 to 200 crore investment, and in each district around 20 crore rupee investment, and then each taluka around 1 to 3 crore rupee investment. So in that case, complete environment is available where we can provide skilling, not only skilling but beyond that, to make these children who participate there as an incubation oriented approach. So incubation centric approach has been taken in developing these centers. So using these centers, a lot of women participation can be brought in, and then they can obviously, once they're skilled, they're ready for taking the entrepreneurship, they can really bring in a change.
Can we take some questions from the house?
I would like to contribute. I've been an entrepreneur in India since 1985. One of the first women entrepreneurs to take bank funding in 1985. And created 4 businesses 4 times from scratch. And I faced the same problem from all the MSME banks, that to scale up, there is nobody there to help you, support you, including your family. The male members of your family will always say, why do you need to do it? Why take the risk? Yeah. That's a main issue in India, is there women are told, why do you want to take the risk of borrowing money and doing business? And why do you want to go to a height where you have this vision or dreams? It's always cancelled as being stupid. It's really thought of as plain and simple stupid. Now from 1985 till 2017, 18, I was running 4 different businesses. Last one I had 100% women employees. I have trained over 500 women in retail, in back-end, front-end, embroidery, artisans, clusters, but the schemes are difficult to decipher. You have to know people inside to really understand what's going on, otherwise nobody's there to help you. I've gone to MSME offices, I don't know how many times, and come back empty-handed because nobody is there unless you know whom to ask and somebody is ready to open the doors for you. I'm sorry, but that's the state. It's the truth of a country. As far as last 2 years, I've become a consultant and I'm helping fundraise because that was an area I said I know nothing about. Even though I was financed right in 1985, I learned to create balance sheets and projected balance sheets and stock reports, but still I didn't know how to do fundraise for a brand which I want to take international. So I started working with different investment banking firms in India, and now I'm working with about 100 different people giving funds in India. And all my clients are only men. Wherefore, I'm a fashion designer and into retail. Forever I've had women clients, and now I'm into trade licensing in infrastructure construction, funding companies, startups to any level. Everywhere I'm the only woman, and there are 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 men, but no women. Yeah, so it's a sad story. And the reason is because men can take risk in India, women cannot take risk in India because their families have brought them up like that. I'm the only one different who doesn't listen. But that's the truth. They're told you can't take risk because it's a challenge. And I have 4 failures where I have got into problem. But then I say, to hell with it, that's life, Men will also say the same. But women will be even scared to say this at home, that I've gone wrong, something has gone wrong. And the pressure on her from the peers, from the male of the house and the society will be, zarurat kya thi? So this is a mindset shift which we need. Why I've joined SheSpeaks, to create this mindset shift across all, from rural up till the end, that women have to be open to taking risks. It's
So
okay
thanks,
to
can I
take
have the
risks.
panelists on this?
Yeah,
would you like to
please.
say something?
Yeah.
Thanks, amazing, amazing work on your end. I'm so confident than a millionaire because it is these large platforms, these large companies that are ruling everything, and they are killing SMEs. That is happening everywhere, whatever the country is. It's obvious that we men have contributed to that in a great extent. So I truly think that women should kind of save the SMEs. That's the only way to do it. So there needs to be, huge kind of mindset change in the whole SME world overall. And men cannot do that. Women can do that. So that's my humble request to women, please save SMEs. I'm dead serious. This is not even a joke.
It is a serious situation.
No, Marika, let me, because coming to the EU, and the EU, as I said, has specifically as a policy, they think that SMEs are the future. SMEs mean better life quality. SMEs mean more environmental responsibility. SMEs mean better protection of data. SMEs mean greater, interests of citizens are kept at the heart of it. And EU seems to be driving policies in favor of SMEs. Is there a purpose behind it? And where do you think this is going to head up? Is EU actually going to lose out in the competitive battle because of this, or is it going to lead?
We're going to lead. No, I completely agree with Jukka. I mean, SMEs, they are the backbone of the economy. I mean, be it in the EU or in India, and we just have to continue to do what we are doing and promote the SMEs and make sure that they get the opportunities, whether it's in domestic trade or in international trade, that you have policies that support that. And I totally agree that the more women we get up and running those SMEs, the better they will become and the more they will prosper. And thank you for your very inspirational talk.
Okay, same question to
What you said resonates with everyone. But I think, I'm sure you also know that things are changing now.
Yes, 100%.
Things are changing quite a bit. especially in urban areas, with more and more women getting educated much better in numbers. And definitely they are also being allowed to take more risks now by their families. If you look at the as a percentage, it's not that high perhaps in the society as such, but definitely things are improving. And now when I have gone around the country, and I'm sure it's the experience of everyone, we see among in incubators, in accelerators, very large number of women who are really very eager to take all the risks that they can take, and they want to do things, they want to make a difference. And as all of us know, when women focus on something, they really focus. Unlike most men who are who can be distracted from time to time, but women are very focused on what they do. So as someone said, they are going to move. It's going to take some time, but yeah.
Priya, let me ask you, I'll come back to Sudhir. Priya, let me ask you, in your experience running a fintech company, if you start comparing the number of women applicants and the rejection rate, where is the greater disproportion? Is it that there are fewer women applicants, or is it that the rejection rate is higher?
So, Sunjoy, this is where it actually becomes very sad. Is that if there were a lot of women applying to us and then we were rejecting them, the solution is a lot easier because the applications are at least coming in. What really happens is that all the applications that are coming into you are in the MSME space. They're all businesses that are being run by men. They are not. Women have lower default rates. Women have higher approval rates. Women have stickiness. So once you lend to a woman, she doesn't go shopping here, there, and she doesn't go to other banks and all of that. She values the relationship. It's a great customer to have from a bank's perspective because she'll always be there. We don't have the applications. We have to bring the applications to us.
So Sudhir, my question, how do you get more women into the space?
Yeah, so I'll share a small story. Like near Bangalore, I was visiting one of the coal plants. So this is a plant started by a father and his family, and the girl was educated and she wanted to participate in the business. So okay, welcome, you join the families, do the business, but nothing great happening. Then this girl now narrates the story. She says that sitting at home, I was doing some courses and I learned how to do e-business. And that's where I started working on that. And I got first order, export order for 1 crore rupee for my father. And that's where my father started looking at me in a different way. And that's where I got the control of the things. So we have to really teach our ladies, girls, more and more to do things in a different manner, and e-commerce, I think, opened up a great opportunity. So if they start, child start contributing in a different way, yes, she is brought into the business space, and they are able to contribute, make their own presence in a different way. So that's what I think we have to work on that. We have to develop a capability among the girl child, particularly on different business spaces also.
Any more questions? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have something to add. There are no questions, so I just wanted to inform. So first of all, thank you so much. It's been such a great panel. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Sunjoy. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Marika, Jukka, and Sunjoy. So what sir was saying that there is a smoothie screen. So we have been doing, Shweta, my trainer is here, who's been recording today, documenting the seminar. So we've been going to many urban slums, and also we've been going to, we have supported many NGOs with free workshops on jewelry making. And we would really like to scale up, as you said, through these 40 schemes. And, we are looking up to banks too, and I rightly agree with Priya, why should it be CSR? It should not be. Unless or until the ultimate goal remains profit maximization for everybody involved in that vertical, it doesn't actually incentivize. And after all, good economics is good politics, I would say. And yes, we all look up to Scandinavian model and EU model as far as empowerment is concerned. I've again and again said that to Marika. And yes, we do appreciate that how things are shaping up for Finland. It's actually a role model for all of us here. And thank you very much, everybody. I'll give it back to Sunjoy to round up the conversation. Thank you so much.
So last bit, and this is really the last 10 minutes. We are running behind time. We all speak about education, that there needs to be more education, there needs to be more skilling. Now my proposition is, from what I've heard on this panel, the skilling in education does not seem to be so much of the women. I think the skilling in education needs to be of the men. And generally the people around, that yes, there is a gender disparity which is totally unreal. There is no logic for it, there is no reason for it, there is no rationality for it. And yet it is being perpetuated. So what do you think?
It's a very provocative subject. I think we definitely should work for attitudinal changes among men. But if we are going to wait for that, you have to wait 1,000 years perhaps. So I think specific interventions, affirmative action are very important to get quality education to large number of women, as large as possible. Good capacity building, skilling, those interventions are extremely important. Give them quotas in admission, scholarships, stipend, places where they can live properly, they can travel properly, safely. Those are the kind of conditions you must provide. Give them good education, good skilling, and I think things will happen. But definitely, as somebody said this last couple of years, actually the parents should be talking to their sons, their men in the family, and ask them to respect women. But for that, the father also has to respect the mother first. Otherwise, he can't give a lecture to the son. So I think this whole thing comes right from the values they inculcate from their family. If they see their mother or the sister not being treated properly, to expect him to treat their others properly again is unrealistic. So definitely, large-scale interventions are required to effect attitudinal change. But I think the interventions in education, skilling, and other spaces will yield slightly faster results.
Financial education to women, which is
Or everybody.
No, that's
Women will, as a matter of fact, financial literacy is one of the worst around the world. In India, it is abysmal.
Yeah.
People who will not spend 1,000 rupees without 100 hours of research will invest 10 lakh rupees just by somebody's advice. So this is terrible. But
it's very
absolutely,
bad. It's very bad.
and women will learn much faster the financial literacy than men.
So thank you very much. It's been a very, very fantastic panel. Thanks to all the panelists for such an engaging discussion. It's a pleasure having you all right here. And I learned a lot from all of you. Thank you so much. Please, a big round of applause.